Hey there, students. Tom Ritchie here, and it is time for some AP Euro review. Okay, so we've got, some AP Euro review coming tonight. Now, those of you in the audience on Crowdcast, now remember, if you are joining us on YouTube, be sure to join our Crowdcast course because that's basically where I'm taking live questions. You will also get updates about when I'm going live. Okay, so if you join the Crowdcast course, you'll know the schedule. There are some things that I may not announce, on YouTube typically, but I'll announce them there. A POG moment in the chat. Okay, so POGers, which we have gone all the way from, now note, we will go back. I know that there are some things as far as the French Revolution, Napoleon. Last week, that was our topic. We got cut short due to some technical difficulties, but we will go back and do, I love the French Revolution. So those of you want some French Revolution before the exam, y'all don't worry about that. I definitely will do a dedicated French Revolution review. Now, also, some people were asking about the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment. Those of you who are here in the Crowdcast with me, I'm going to go ahead and share some review notes that I did in a recent tutoring session. So scientific revolution and Enlightenment. So I'm going to give y'all some notes there. I know that was before spring break, so that seems like kind of a long time ago. And I actually need to make this share with anyone with the link. Okay, so we're done there. You should be able to come in here and take a look at these review notes if you have questions about the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to everybody that's watching on YouTube. But just remember, we're trying to steer as many people to the Crowdcast group as we can. So with that, let's go ahead and begin our questions. Okay, so as far as that goes, when was the Congress of Vienna, and what are the main points to remember about the Congress of Vienna? Now, I've actually got a video on the Congress of Vienna. I would definitely recommend that video to y'all. And then I've also got a Metternich rap. Okay, so if you go to my YouTube or SoundCloud, you can find my Metternich rap, which has been one of my more popular raps over the years. Some people like that warm water record stuff. If that's not your thing, that is totally okay. So with that, first question's about the Congress of Vienna, and I think that works out very well because that's at the very beginning. And in fact, somebody's asking when was the Congress of Vienna is the first part of this question, which that is always the thing that we've got there. Now, Dami, we've got, as far as that goes, yeah, you should have access to the document now, that Scientific Revolution Enlightenment Review. Just refresh it. Now, the French Revolution, I've got tons of lectures on YouTube, and again, I'm going to actually do some more with that. Don't think that I have lost love for the French Revolution or Napoleon. You're going to see some more stuff there. So y'all just bear with me, and we're going to focus on industry and isms this time. So the Congress of Vienna happened in 1815. Now, if some of y'all are like, hey, whoa, you're going fast on these slides, remember that I've got this as a lecture on my YouTube channel where you can pause the slides and all of that. So 1815, this is basically an attempt to, to try to reorganize Europe after Napoleon's defeat. And so Napoleon surrenders, and then the great powers have to figure out, how do we set Europe aright after about a quarter of a century of continual warfare in Europe? And so this is about resetting an order. So they are meeting in Vienna to establish order. They want to undo the French Revolution, Napoleon. Now, we can't pretend it didn't happen, but let's see how close we can get to pretending it didn't happen. Okay, that's what we're seeing there. Let's see how close we can get to that. And so going from there, that we see here that one of the main objectives here is to restore the balance of power. Now, note here, I think that a comparison is in order here, because those of you who are taking the, for example, let's think about the paper pencil where you could have an LEQ, the quadruple alliance, okay, Britain, Russia, Prussia, Britain, Russia, Prussia, and Austria. That would be an interesting name, Prussia. Prussia. I need to make a shirt that says Prussia and like think about like my own customized eagle. Maybe that would be my little utopian community or something like that. Now, this is not about punishment, okay? This is not about punishing France. This is about restoring the balance of power, which is why France eventually is brought into the discussions. Now, this is a little bit different than if we're looking at, the Treaty of Versailles, for example. Now, let me show you some notes that I've been working on here. That I've got something here that I was working on with a tutoring client last night. And go ahead and take a picture of this if you want, or something like that. You can do a screenshot or whatever. You'll probably see something a little formal from me at some point. But I made a little comparison between the Congress of Vienna and the Versailles Treaty and the Paris Peace Conference. So if we're looking at these, the Congress of Vienna in 1815, I got some hiccups going. The Versailles Treaty in 1919. In both cases, we have settlements that are reached after catastrophic wars, okay? So, basically catastrophic continental wars. Now, when we talk about continental wars, we're talking about wars not just one-on-one or two-on-one, but this is where all the great powers are fighting each other in some way. And so both of these are to reach settlements after catastrophic continental wars. The goal here in both cases is to, goodness, I tell you what, whoo, okay, I need to stand on my head or something like that. Hold my breath and count to 5. These hiccups are getting me. So the goal is to prevent another continental war and to establish cooperation between nations. Y'all just bear with me here. Now, the Congress of Vienna was dominated by conservatives, whereas the Versailles Treaty is dominated by liberals. Now, by liberals, I'm talking about 20th century liberals. So it's kind of like the watered down 20th century liberalism. It's not quite on the classical liberal level, but it's a more like Woodrow Wilson would definitely be considered a more liberal figure. He is a big proponent of democracy, for example. Now, not influenced by public opinion. The Congress of Vienna did not have to think about what are our subjects going to think, okay? But when we think about this, now, one thing that I want to add here as well is that this was against nationalism, okay? And basically this was, this was for nationalism, basically, so for nationalism. So we see like new states created, okay? So basically new national states, we see here new national states created. So I'm just kind of coming up with all of these things here. I just thought about that one. So not influenced by public opinion, and here influenced by public opinion. And this is a big deal because after a catastrophic war, the people and the press, which the people are often driven by the press, they want blood, okay? Whereas in the Congress of Vienna, you didn't have to think about like the people are going to want someone punished. That the great powers are able to get together and they're able to have a serious conversation about how to create a Europe where this isn't going to happen again. Now, as I mentioned, in the Congress of Vienna, France is included in negotiations, whereas at the Versailles Treaty, the Paris Peace Conference, Germany is excluded from negotiations. And basically they are told, here, sign this. We put this together for you that basically blames you for the war, okay? Blames, punishes, and weakens Germany, okay? So basically forcing German demilitarization, war guilt, and reparations. Whereas here, the objective is to restore the balance of power, that France's status as a great power is maintained. I haven't had hiccups so bad since my goodness, all right. So France's status as a great power is maintained. Whereas Germany, they make sure that Germany can never be a great power again. Now that's one of those things, the law of unintended consequences, my goodness. And then the Congress of Vienna is against nationalism, okay? So can we keep nationalism from being a destabilizing force? Whereas after the Treaty of Versailles, or as a result, we have the creation of these new national states like Poland, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia. All of these national states are either created or expanded, like in the case of Romania, for example. The national state of Romania is expanded into what used to be Austria-Hungary. Now, then it establishes the Congress of Vienna establishes the concert system. Okay, the concert system, which of course, none of us have been going to concerts lately, but hopefully that's going to pick back up at a certain point. So with that, the concert system is basically all of the European powers are going to work in concert with each other in order to keep any more wars from happening. Whereas, that is an informal arrangement. The League of Nations, created by the Versailles Treaty, is going to be a formal. Let's see if that works. Okay, we're going to see if holding your breath for 5 seconds works. Does it only work if you stand on your head? I don't know. But the League of Nations is a formal arrangement. Okay, so then we note that the Congress of Vienna, not influenced by the United States. The United States was a neutral party. Whereas in AP Euro, when you get into the 20th century, you'll notice, oh, here's the United States all of a sudden. And actually, I'm learning about a lot of the same stuff. As far as that goes, a lot of the same stuff, just from a different angle. Whereas before the 20th century, we don't see, we don't really see the United States. And so with that, we see that the degree of success. Now, note here that I'm noting the next continental war. Okay, in order for it to be a continental war, it has to involve all of the great powers fighting against each other for a long time, with lots and lots, like casualties in the millions. Okay, so when we think about continental wars, we're thinking of the 30 Years' War, the War of the Spanish Succession, the Napoleonic Wars, World War I, World War II. These are what we're thinking of as continental wars. Okay, so the next continental war, World War I is the first war that comes anywhere close to the magnitude of the destruction and death brought by the Napoleonic Wars. So when we're thinking about like the Crimean War, the Franco-Prussian War, Austro-Prussian War, that's really not anywhere on that same level. And so with that, with the Versailles Treaty, the next continental war, not 99 years, but 20 years, okay? And it's pretty evident very early that this is something that is going to, is not going to be stable, okay? So what we see here is, we are followed here at the Congress of Vienna, followed by decades of stability. Okay, so we think about classical conservatism, stability between within European states. It's the goal of this order that I'm trying to create. So join me in Vienna, where a Congress is in session. Together we can stop the revolution from progressing. So y'all are welcome to listen to my Metternich rap. It's on YouTube and it's also on my SoundCloud. So followed by immediate. Okay, so immediate instability. Okay, so with that, we see a stability in Europe after the Congress of Vienna. So the Versailles Treaty, in a lot of ways, is a catastrophic failure. If we're thinking that the point of a treaty is to prevent a continental war, I was actually helping a student last night on, okay, what are some things in terms of, when I was working with my client, the essay prompt was evaluate the extent to which World War II was the result of the consequences of World War I and the policies following World War I. And really, when it comes down to it, like, most everything when we're looking at this, that, the causes of World War II, the World War I settlement, the economic crisis, the rise of totalitarianism, the Great Depression, Allied disarmament, German rearmament, and appeasement. These all have something to do directly and indirectly with World War I. But I digress. We were talking about the Congress of Vienna, right? But, this is an exam review. So we want to make sure when we're looking at the Congress of Vienna that we're not only looking at it in isolation, but we're also looking at it in terms of how does it compare to other agreements. So the Congress of Vienna is called in order to restore the balance of power. And remember Metternich, who's really like the conservative icon of the, of the early 19th century of Austria. I think holding my breath for 5 seconds actually worked. So that may not be just a, old wives' tale or something like that. I mean, I think I'm going to swear by that now. So with that, Metternich called the coachman of Europe, whereas Metternich kind of steers Europe for some decades, Woodrow Wilson shows up at Versailles thinking he's going to be able to direct things and can't even direct the treaty, much less what comes after it. And so with that, we'll note here that conservatives, they champion stability within states and stability between states, okay? And that's the main goal of the Congress of Vienna, to set up this concert system. Okay, so when we think about stability within states, we think about, keeping the traditional social hierarchy, traditional institutions. Another thing about conservatives is they tended to be very friendly toward religion, for example, like basically religion having a form, a role in the government. That conservatives tend not to like secularism. That is a liberal thing. And so we see here that conservatives believe in traditions, institutions, aristocracy, none of this liberal reform, popular government, nationalism, and of course, stability between states. That's having to do with not having wars. Okay, the concert of Europe, which becomes, it is the first attempt at collective security where the great powers are trying to assist each other. But note that it is an informal precedent. Okay. So when we look later on in the 20th century, we see things that are formal: the League of Nations, NATO, the UN, the EU, all of these formal arrangements. So with that, I know we took a little jump into the 20th century, but I think that's going to help out a little bit. So on this, let's see, high key relatable, Ella says. Okay. So as far as that, now, on Jolly, make sure THERE. Okay, so there, it's not there possessive. And so, so with that, okay, so one's in trouble. Okay, so excellent. It looks like y'all are having a good time over there. Now, what we'll note here, though, with the revolutions of 1848, that Metternich is for a time ousted, but Metternich actually comes back. Like Metternich goes back to Austria after the revolutions of 1848 fail. So we want to note that. Okay, so what we're going to note here, Jay, is that the concert of Europe is a byproduct of the Congress of Vienna. The Congress of Vienna is a meeting. Okay, the Congress of Vienna is a meeting. And so, so with that, the concert of Europe is the system that comes through that. So, for example, I would say that something similar here, the relationship between the Congress of Vienna and the Concert of Europe is very similar to the relationship between the Treaty of Versailles and the League of Nations, okay? But the thing is, Congress of Vienna, Concert of Europe, they sound similar, but the concert system is the system of collective security and European cooperation. Okay. So when we think about Anjali, which you tend to like to have your name said here on the broadcast, and remember, anybody tuning in on YouTube, we see Tanage VP and Marco Learning drop by on the YouTube chat. Y'all make sure to feel free to come join us on the Crowdcast, or you're welcome to keep watching on YouTube. And so, who were the where did I? Okay, causes and effects, consequences of industrialization. Okay, so as far as that goes, one of the things that we want to note about Britain. Okay, so one of the things about the Industrial Revolution, we want to think about Cardi T. Ah ha ha! Y'all are talking about that ruling absolutely WAP parody, aren't you? That I should think about that. Okay, so with that, we want to think about like why Britain. Okay, so if we're thinking about this, the Industrial Revolution and thinking why Britain. Okay, so let me make a little thing here, and let's see, AP Euro. Okay, gonna run in here and let's go ahead and come on, come on, come on. My Google Drive's being a little bit funny here, but you know what? I'm just gonna go ahead and do this without any kind of writing things down. We're gonna make a list. Y'all are gonna write it down. Old school, right? So first of all, we want to think about the Industrial Revolution as a collection of like natural factors and human factors. So why did the Industrial Revolution happen in Britain? Now, first of all, let's think about the natural factors. Britain has a lot of natural waterways, okay? A lot of rivers. When you compare like a physical map of Britain to a physical map of France, okay, you're going to see, let's see, maps.google.com. Let's see what we can do here. Okay, so I'm going to run over to Europe and let's see what we can see over here. I'm just crossing the Atlantic Ocean right now. Okay, so as far as that goes, now this isn't meant to be a physical map. Let me see how much I have to zoom in to like see. You know what? Actually, that's probably not going to be the best thing. So y'all are just going to take my word for it, okay? That Britain, if I say physical map of Britain and France. Okay, so if I were to go here, or let's see, physical map of Europe. Okay, so rivers. Okay, so let's go ahead and say a physical map of Europe with rivers. I don't know if I'm going to get what I'm looking for here, but I think what you're probably going to do, though, you're just going to take my word for it. Britain had a lot of waterways. Okay, and so that's something that I think is just, is going to be important there. Yeah, I'm not able to find something to show you, but you're just going to take my word for it that Britain had a lot of rivers. And so there are ways to get things around. Also, rivers are sources of hydroelectric power. Now, also, Britain has a lot of coal, like natural resources. So Britain has a lot of coal, and Britain also has wool. Like before cotton becomes the big industrial textile good, wool is important. So the British have wool. Black sheep, have you any wool? Yes, sir, 3 bags full. I'm pretty sure that originated in English because it rhymes in English. It sounds great. All right. So as far as that goes, ladies and gentlemen, I know you're having fun in the chat, but y'all know it's going to be kind of difficult to, y'all are pressing F to pay. Chelsea's pressing F to pay respects to the chat. All right. So as far as that goes, natural resources, rivers, coal, wool, that sort of thing. Now, then there are human factors, okay? So there is a lot of debate among historians about this. When we think about human factors, property rights in Britain were more advanced in the mid-18th century than in France. So, for example, remember how before the French Revolution, French nobles had all of these rights, and the French didn't really have a strong patent office, which means that if you invented something in France, there was no legal mechanism to keep someone from copying you and putting that into use. Now, in Britain, if you were to invent something, you could go to the Royal Patent Office and you have a patent for a certain amount of time. Nobody else can make this. Now, what do patents do? Patents incentivize innovation, because if I can't get credit for it, if I don't have the patent for it, then I'm going to be in a position that's going to be difficult for me to keep other people from copying me and making money off of my invention before I get to make money off of it. Now, patents don't last forever, but patents basically give you a head start. So Britain rewarded innovation. They had strong property rights. They also had a stable government, a stable representative government. Like the Glorious Revolution gives Britain a stable political climate, which is something that, is very important. If there is a government that people are like, is that government going to get overthrown? There's not going to be a lot of economic development there. Now, also, where they don't have rivers, the British are willing to build canals. They had a central bank. France did not have a central bank until Napoleon set up the Bank of France in the, after 1800. I think it was 1803, if I'm not mistaken. So the Bank of France, France in the mid 18th century did not have a national bank. So France, what we want to note here is that Britain went very fast. Okay, so when we think about Britain, France, and Germany, that Britain industrialized very, very quickly. And put this together almost in no time, and it had very little government help or intervention aside from having a climate. Like government created a good climate there for industrial expansion. Now, on the other side, Britain had a lot of upheavals. When you look at like Alexis de Tocqueville and other people who were visiting industrial Manchester, they're like, oh my goodness, this is just so awful. And so the thing is, Britain has a lot of upheavals because of this, economic upheavals. Now, France is industrializing at a more deliberate pace. Okay, so France is industrializing more slowly. Remember, by the time of the French Revolution, the largest group in France was still the peasantry, and Napoleon was always very popular with the peasantry. That was one of the reasons why Napoleon, why Napoleon did like the Concordat, for example, with the Catholic Church. The peasantry tended to be religious and supportive of the Catholic Church, and Napoleon is giving the peasantry what they want. Whereas, in Britain, the peasantry are not going to be by 1800 such a force to be reckoned with because people have gone into the cities. So France will industrialize at a slower, more deliberate pace, and they will have some assistance from the government. Now, then there is, of course, Prussia, Germany, okay, depending on what year, that Bismarck and his government are working with in cooperation with the liberals in the liberals in the Reichstag in order to accelerate industrialization. So Germany is really the last one to get started industrializing out of Britain, France, and Germany, but they do it very quickly with a lot of government assistance. And also, we'll note, in order to deal with the upheavals, Bismarck creates the first limited welfare state, where he's got old age pensions, accident insurance, health insurance, that there are these government programs that are designed to help people who are having a hard time. Okay. And as far as that goes, remember, ladies and gentlemen, my Insta is at Tom Ritchie. And also for AP tips like beyond AP Euro, remember to follow my friends at Marco Learning. I will be shouting out to anybody that's like a new follower or anything like that. So who were the most important people in the Industrial Revolution? Now, the Industrial Revolution is not like the Enlightenment where you're going to run across like a whole bunch of names, for example. But it is, the Industrial Revolution does have a few people. Now, I would note James Watt is somebody that I would mention. This is the person who perfected the steam engine. The steam engine basically makes it so a factory no longer has to be next to a river. A steam engine makes it so a factory can go anywhere, and that's what makes industrial cities possible, and also industrial transportation. Remember, the first trains, basically the first trains are powered by steam engines. Okay, and so with that, let me run on to Instagram here and see if we've got any new followers here. All right, so let's see. Hope McDonald, I don't know if she's in on this broadcast. Actually, I think all of y'all are already following me. We've got the usual suspects here. Okay, so another one I would mention, Thomas Malthus. Thomas Malthus was the one who wrote the essay on the principle of population, where he proposed the Malthusian dilemma. The Malthusian dilemma is that, what you're seeing here is, let's see, Malthusian. the Malthusian curve. Okay, so Malthusianism, this comes from Thomas Malthus, and Thomas Malthus is concerned. He's actually a minister who dabbles in economics, but Malthus is concerned that at some point, what he says is that the food supply grows at an arithmetic rate, which, addition, the food supply. Food supply plus one, plus one, plus one, plus one, or plus two, whatever it is. Okay, you see a line with basically, a sort of ongoing slope here. Whereas Malthus says that the population, it's going to grow geometrically or by a multiplier. So while this is plus two, plus two, plus two, plus two, times two, times two, times two, times two, times two. And then what's going to happen here is you've got this period where, when the population gets to a certain point, we're going to run out of food. Okay. And so that's something that, definitely influences policy, that wages are going to be paid at the subsistence level. Now, there's where David Ricardo is another economist who is often associated with the iron law of wages, although it's not as directly connected to him as like Malthus. And so paying subsistence wages based on the Malthusian curve is seen as a humanitarian move, because if you pay somebody too much, they're going to go have more kids, and if they go home and have more kids, then we're all going to starve. Okay, so that Malthus is somebody I would keep in mind as well. So I would say Thomas Malthus and James Watt would be two people that I would mention in the context of the Industrial Revolution. So yeah, as far as that goes, I do think as far as this, Aditha, that is something that, yeah, I think David Ricardo, even though I think David Ricardo's theories are often oversimplified, but yes, Malthus and Ricardo, their theories are both very influential in paying low wages during this time. Well, I don't know if he's saying survival of the fittest. Malthus is saying no. So let's not confuse Malthus with social Darwinism. Okay, Malthus is somebody, like I said, Malthus was a minister. Malthus was somebody who loved Jesus and didn't want everybody to die. It's actually that, when you think about it, when we run out of food, it's the poor that are going to die first. So let's note that Malthus is not, so the difference between Darwin and Malthus is that Darwin is a scientist who is going and, he's not really motivated by religion. Whereas Malthus is somebody who is concerned. Malthus is like, look, if we don't figure out a way to get population growth under control, then we are going to run out of resources. Now, as far as that, social Darwinism and Darwinism, they are basically, social Darwinism is a slang term, okay? There was no so Herbert Spencer never came out and said, hey, what I'm doing here, it's social Darwinism. And so, he's basically just a philosopher who doesn't really have a name. Herbert Spencer was one of the most popular philosophers in the late 19th century. And so Herbert Spencer is someone who is Herbert Spencer is someone who is, just putting this philosophy out there, and, actually was the first one to use the term survival of the fittest. Now, Spencer would be more likely to say, look, if you have low taxes and a low regulatory climate, somebody's going to show up who's going to figure out how to feed everybody. Social Darwinism is basically that if you allow free competition and you don't have needless taxes and regulations, that what's going to happen is that everybody's going to be better off. Okay, so that when the strongest and the fittest are able to do what they can, do without interference, without the government taking their money and giving it to the less fit, then because when government takes the money, gives it to the less fit, it doesn't necessarily get allocated the best way. Think about this, okay? That when we think about, for example, y'all saw the memes. Did y'all see the memes like a few weeks ago or last month or whenever, when the stimulus checks came out, about how people were going to spend their stimulus checks? The government just throws money at everybody, and people go and they don't necessarily make the best decisions. Okay, there are some people who probably put that money in the bank or something like that. But with that, we want to note that I wouldn't call social Darwinism an offshoot of Darwinistic theories, because Herbert Spencer uses survival of the fittest than Darwin does. Okay, so I would say that there is a scientific philosophy and a philosophy of human relationships that is developing at the same time. Okay, so that's something that you want to know. Oh gosh, I would love me some boba right now. Okay, that sounds gosh, anybody want to bring by some boba tea? So with that, yeah, I want boba right now. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and go from all right, so how did the movement to industrialize? Okay, onwards. Okay, so I think that we have, we've definitely mentioned this. Now, note that Eastern Europe is industrializing much more slowly than Western Europe. That in the early, in Russia starts industrializing in the late 19th century, really, that you've got Alexander II. And that, of course, is going to continue. That is a process that's going to continue through Stalin. So Eastern Europe is going to lag behind Western Europe. And note that I've already mentioned the industrialization of Britain, France, and Germany. Okay, so that's something we want to note there. Now, with this, gosh, that is a very interesting question there. All right, so with that, why did conservatives like religion? Okay, so as far as that goes, that conservatives. And there's some of this stuff that's really like backed by scientific studies. Like I can get into study show mode. This is one of those things that like people who have religious faith, they tend to live longer than people who don't, like people of strong religious faith, because religious faith is something that instills confidence in someone. Like if you think about somebody who is always just like, praise God, I trust God, praise God, trust God, God is good all the time, God is good. Usually that person tends to be happy. They don't tend to worry as much. They tend to have more gratitude for what they have. Now, again, somebody can be religious and be an ungrateful and rotten person. Somebody can be an atheist and be a wonderful and grateful person. But when we aggregate it, okay, that religion, now people also who have, strong religious beliefs, there is a tendency to conduct themselves more morally. Now, again, there are some religious people that are rotten people. There are irreligious people who are some of the best people I know. But it's, religion is something that as a social force, it's something that people are more likely to obey the laws. People are more likely to conduct themselves morally. And so religion, like what conservatives are afraid of, is that if religion breaks down, then morality and traditions break down. So it's like, that now also we want to note that conservatives, most of them sincerely believe in religion. I don't want to portray conservatives as being using religion in a skeptical fashion. So I would say that's the other one. When you think, why did conservatives oppose secularism? They see the church as a beneficial institution that, for example, what happens when you look at the French Revolution? There's a point where during the French Revolution that you see these attacks. First, the church is regulated, then the church is attacked, and then a bunch of heads are coming off. Okay, so the church does tend to be a stabilizing influence. So that's why conservatives are so big on the church. All right, and thank y'all so much. We got new Instagram followers over here. We've got ttv.bb, Amaya, Jeb Davis. Jeb, I think were you already following me? The profile picture looks familiar. That's an interesting one. Maybe it's are those 8-bit shades? Maybe not. But then Olivia, Leah, Amber, and Tanu. All right. So thank y'all so much for the recent follows. So let me go ahead and note something here. Now, I don't know what we're talking about, like the leading manufacturer. That one looks. I'm just not sure what we're getting into here. So going with there, how did Germany catch up? And I think that we're probably going to be cutting this, basically, wrapping up in a little bit. Now, remember, on top of these Monday broadcasts, I also do sessions with Marco Learning on Wednesdays at 8 o'clock. MarcoLearning.com/student-support. I'm going to go ahead and put something about this in the chat. Those are also some very beneficial sessions. Those are 90-minute sessions every Wednesday at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern. They are recorded if you can't get there live. And those tend to be, partly Q&A, but partly skill-based, okay? So as far as that goes, I'm going to make sure y'all know how to get to MarcoLearning.com, student support. So Germany catch up to Britain. Now, this is intentional, okay? So for example, remember that Bismarck, he wants to industrialize. So he gets the liberals cooperating with him in order to industrialize Germany. It's the same reason, if we think about during the scientific revolution, why did absolute monarchs, finance like royal academies and things like that? And so they're doing that because they believe it will strengthen their governments and their capacity to make war. And definitely, like from Bismarck's perspective, an industrialized country, a country that's not industrialized is not going to do well in a war against an industrialized country. So when you look at the Franco-Prussian War and the Austro-Prussian War, those are both wars that show that an army that is using like the latest methods and the latest industrial developments, that army is going to be much more successful than an army that is not using those latest developments. All right, thank you, Noah, and the Sentimental Journey. Black Sabbath. All right, we got a headbanger there. Roxy G205, Winifred Life, Izzy, and Tohaz Muss. Okay, so we've got there. With a zero post account. Those are always, so I don't know, why do people do zero post accounts? Like, I still don't get that. Of course, I guess I don't have a zero post account. So I think I've got over 1,000 posts. So I just, it's hard for me to get that. So with that, just note that these were very, intentional efforts. And remember, even in Russia, by the late 19th century, Alexander II, Alexander III, they are both directing the modernization of Russia and the building of the Trans-Siberian Railroad. All right, Roxy, shout out. All right, we got that. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, next week we will focus on, speaking of Bismarck, we'll focus on the late 19th century. And of course, we are kind of coming up on the exam. So remember, Monday night, 8 o'clock. And just remember, ladies and gentlemen, that it is always a pleasure.